There it is. How we all doing? How we doing this evening? How we doing this evening? What the hell is that? Oh no. I was wondering, I was like, what's going on there? It was like a thing on the screen. How we all doing? We had a lot to talk about. I wish I hadn't got this thumbnail before I uploaded this because I would have talked about Spence. But we'll talk about, primarily we're going to be talking about Spence. Spence Crawford, Spence Ugas in this video. I didn't get a chance to do a post-fight. So we're going to talk a bit about it here. And we're into fight week as well. So we'll let the chat get up. Look at that. Big up to Ali Drew. If only it was the real Ali Drew, I'd be a very happy G. Shout out to Love Boxing TV, John and Kaya. Big up to you guys. Looking forward to seeing your live this week. Definitely if you're doing a live on Wednesday. If I'm not doing anything else, I'll definitely try and pop by as well. Big up to you guys. Big up to Daz every time. Big up to G-Man every time. Yes, man. Yes, man. How bad was the Zoom call? It wasn't terrible. I was glad that we got something. And there was a few things that you can take from that Zoom call as well, which I definitely did. So, look, it's not the same. We all know that. But it is what it is. Big up to E-Machine. What's taking so long? No. I gave it, I think it was like 2 minutes late. Jesus, it's not that much, man. 2 minutes. You can afford me 2 minutes. I had to go and pour a thing of Coke, so. What little Coke I have left. Frank sat in his car. I still haven't even... I looked at the box rec for that card, but I haven't looked at any of the highlights. Frank Warren's Queensbury cards have gone to hell. They really have. I mean, they're absolute... Frank Warren is really... I think he's really banking on making a serious profit from this Fury fight. Because if he doesn't, I swear, he probably will make a big profit from it anyway, but his cards have just gone to the dogs. You know, they've been going that way for years. But when he started with BT, if you remember, those cards weren't awful. They weren't great, but they weren't awful at the same time. He was putting on some decent scraps. Whereas now, they're not really marketed, so you don't even know that they're happening. And then when they are happening, you're just like, who's this guy? Big up to Tom B. G-Man, I'm telling you, watch the very minimum Whyte footage. He is way stronger than he's ever been. Holding his body properly. Looks in amazing shape. I have seen that. I've seen little bits of Whyte, and yeah, he is looking in very good shape. And I think that for Dillian Whyte, the lighter he comes, albeit I hope he's lost the weight, you know, slowly, incrementally over a bit of time. But the lighter he comes in, the better I think he's going to have, better chance he's going to have. I think the heavier Dillian Whyte is, especially if Fury's going to move. And believe me, I've got videos on ways Dillian Whyte can win the fight coming up this week as well. But I think that if Fury is going to move, Dillian Whyte, he's not the most sophisticated pressure fighter you've ever seen in the world, but he does do some good things. But the problem is, when he's so much heavier, when he is swinging, I definitely think, well, certainly, I think his foot speed, when he's heavier, is always going to be slower. His shape and his balance is just not right. You know, what I mean by shape is, I mean the way he keeps his shape in the ring. I'm not talking about aesthetically. You know, I'm talking about how he actually keeps his shape in the ring. When he's lighter, he does tend to keep his shape a lot better. You know, he's never going to be, he's never going to be graceful in the ring. Don't misconstrue that. They can just picture Dillian Whyte. It's a funny thought, actually, just, you know, moving gracefully around the ring. You're never going to see that. But I definitely think that he keeps his shape in terms of his footwork, in terms of his balance a lot better when he's a little bit lighter, in around the 240s. I can't envision him coming in any lighter than the mid-240s. I'd be very surprised if he did now, very surprised. But he does look in good shape. I think he's going to need to. I think we're going to need to see the best version of Dillian Whyte. I don't think he's going to want to make any mistakes. And I think that he's going to need to be... I suspect Fury is going to box a bit in this fight. I suspect he's going to revert to similar to the Tom Schwartz fight. Now, if you watch the Tom Schwartz fight, even though it was a very difficult fight for Tyson Fury, you see someone like Tom Schwartz, who is... He's slightly taller than Dillian Whyte, and obviously he's a southpaw. But how Fury sets up some of the shots, and here's another thing, right? This is one thing good about Fury, which he might have a lot of success doing against Dillian Whyte, is that even when he's moving back, even when a fighter is coming in, he's not actually throwing the jab. He's throwing his jab, but he's leaving the jab out because he knows he's got the advantage in terms of height and reach. Now he's doing the Tom Schwartz, and it's offsetting Tom Schwartz, so he's struggling to get in on Tyson Fury. Like he's struggling to get in by that jab, even when it's not a ramrod jab. He's just kind of holding it out there, right? And Tom Schwartz is 6'5". It's a much better mover than Dillian Whyte is. I worry how Dillian Whyte is ever going to get in on Tyson Fury. And if you could smash the like button, it would help, man. Shout out to Dell, big up. Yes, G-Man, good fights the weekend. Pleased to see Spence back. Love his style. Errol Spence beat the living crap out of Yordenis Ugas. I do think he was buzzed. Now, Errol Spence was buzzed in the 6th round, but he wasn't. He recovered it. He recovered it fairly quick. He recovered from it fairly quick, and I do think some of it was confusion when he spit his mouthpiece out. He just kind of looked down and gave Yordenis Ugas a free shot. Yordenis Ugas hasn't got much of a killer instinct, to be fair. But Errol Spence seemed to take the shot, seemed to be buzzed, but seemed to just kind of snap back into it real quick. So that's a good sign for it. It's not a good sign that, but Errol Spence always actually is a bit lacking in defense, to be fair. But the fact that we know he's able to kind of come through these crises fairly quick. And just watching Errol Spence, there was moments I was just thinking, good Lord, it's like watching Errol Spence hit a human heavy bag. And Yordenis Ugas is a good fighter, very good fighter. But I was like, my days, he is hitting a heavy bag in here. The shot selection from Spence, the aggression from Spence, the way he was able to vary it up the head and body. When I look at Errol Spence throw them body shots in, you just grimace. I mean, Spence's body work is absolutely ferocious in there. And I was worried so much about Errol Spence going into this fight, thinking that, will we ever see Errol Spence back to how he was? Well, in the Garcia fight, I thought he'd done very well, and he beat Danny Garcia soundly. But I still had my doubts that we would get the Errol Spence that we know. Well, those doubts were put to bed because he looked better in this fight. I want to say he looked better in this fight than he did against Porter, because in my opinion, he did. He looked better than he did against Garcia. I'd even go a step far and say he looked better in this fight than he did against Kell Brook. Many people feel as though that was probably Spence's most complete performance. And yes, you could say it may very well have been. But I feel in this fight, I genuinely think he looked better. And this was a better performance, at least in my opinion, than the Kell Brook fight. Now, whether you agree with that or not, it's up to yourself. But I genuinely think this was a better performance from Kell Brook. Oh, man, yes. Yes. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I think that would be I hope to God they do. I think that would be absolutely hilarious if they did. Get your first beer Saturday, get it done early, get the £3, man. I definitely will. I said I'd have a few for the Fury Whyte fight. I definitely will. Buy a couple of something. I don't know what, but I'll buy something for it. Just because I'm going to start early for that. Like, I'm probably going to start... I'll probably start that live about 8 o'clock. About 8 or half 8, give or take. Maybe half 8. Give or take is when we'll start on Saturday. But Saturday, we're obviously doing a watch along. Y'all know that. And, yeah, we're going to be going at that early. We are definitely going to be going at that early. Just check my phone there real quick. Based on Ben's performance last night, do you think he can beat Ennis Boots? Hell no, we can't. Hell no. Hell no, he's not beating Ennis Boots. I mean, there were loads of fighters at 147 pounds that I'd pick over Conor Benn. Stanionis got a win last night. I'd pick him over Conor Benn. Batayev, who lost, I'd still pick him over Conor Benn. Kabalaskis, maybe, because he is, like, you look at Kabalaskis at 147 pounds, right? He is a unit at that weight. And you look at Conor Benn, he's not the biggest welterweight you've ever seen. He's not. And I think that although Kabalaskis he probably has seen better days, I still think he'd be able to beat Conor Benn at least at this point in Ben's career. I think, or at this point in Kabalaskis' career, I think he'd be able to beat Ben still, definitely. Regarding Dillian Whyte, is there anything on if he's lived a life outside the ring historically? Regarding Whyte, is there anything on if he's lived the life outside the ring historically? In what sense? Like, as in, like, has he... Well, we know we've seen him balloon up in between fights, if that's what you mean. That's a given. He's done that loads of times, which isn't good. and he is getting up there in age. Although for heavyweights, he can still get away with it. But yeah, definitely he's blue. He's gone up in between fights. We've seen it. We've seen it in the Rivas fight, in the press conferences. He looked overweight. He obviously looked atrocious in the back fight. So yeah, he has been at times getting overweight. What am I drinking? I'm drinking Coca-Cola, and I'm finishing off the last of this. I didn't finish it all last night, so I'm going to clear it. That's it. That Spence Ugas fight seemed a bit weird for me. Maybe Spence just had a hard style for him, and he had a bad game plan. Yeah, like you don't want to stand in front of Errol Spence and give him room to hit you. That's just a bad idea. That's just a really, really, really bad idea. Giving Errol Spence free whacks. And I really would. Yordenis Ugas is a good counterpuncher. I thought he'd have a bit more success. He did early on, to be fair. He picked up a couple of rounds early, but he just didn't. He just had a bad style. If you stand directly in front of Errol Spence, and let him have shots at you, it's just going to end very badly. I would still pick Crawford over to Errol Spence. I would still pick Terence Crawford to beat Errol Spence. Even now, I really hope we get that fight. I heard people say Spence has 2 fights left at 147 pounds, of which this was one of them. So it's looking likely his next fight's going to be his last fight at 147. I hope it's Crawford. I think most people hope it's Crawford. I love that fight. I really, really do. I really like that fight. And I think it needs to happen now because Crawford's not getting any younger. Errol Spence will move up to 154. You've got Boots Ennis and Virgil Ortiz waiting in the wings. And who's to say if another year goes by, one of them couldn't turn over to Terence Crawford? Who's to say? Certainly Boots Ennis is talented enough. He's got the skills to do it. I know he's certainly the most athletic, but he just needs a few little improvements. I picked Batayev, I think, as well to beat, or did I? I think I actually went slightly with Batayev to beat that. Stanionis did do better than I expected. Yeah, Stanionis would beat Conor Benn, in my opinion. I think Stanionis would beat him. I think there's a lot of top welterweights who would beat him. You know, there's a good few at that weight division. It's not a case of, like people say, like Avanesian. Avanesian, as good as he is, would you put him in the top 10? 1 and 2, whatever order you want. 1 and 2. Spence 1, Crawford 2. This isn't how I have it. These are just my top 10. You can have them in whatever order you want. But we'll say Spence, Crawford, Boots, Ennis, Stanionis. Porter's retired. Who else? Stanionis. You could probably, I put Batayev there, touch and go, Avanesian. I'm not going to put Hooker in there because I think Hooker is best at 140 pounds. I'm probably forgetting names. Would I keep Turman? Yeah, I would probably keep Turman in the top 10 just slightly. Danny Garcia. Would you pick him over any of them guys? Seriously? Would you actually pick him over any of them guys? The only one I would say is a chance of beating is that guy. What's his name? Avanesian. I do think he has a slight chance of beating him, to be fair. But none of the rest. I mean, like, with Conor Benn, right, Eddie Hearn knows he's got a guy who's making him money. Although saying that, there was only, I think, there was only like 6,000 fans there last night. But he has a guy he knows is making him money, right? So I'm sure for Eddie Hearn thinking, why would I risk him against a kind of British European level guy who's a bit of a puncher? Because he's never fought a puncher in his career. But I can make money off these former champions and just keep the gravy train rolling. Why would I need to put him in before he's ready? You know, I remember Hatman speaking about Josh Kelly. The Josh Kelly situation is an interesting one, right? I remember at the time, yeah, there was a lot of people blaming Eddie Hearn. To be fair to Eddie Hearn, I actually don't blame him for the Josh Kelly debacle. I think that the blame should go at Adam Boot. That was, if anyone deserves blame for Josh Kelly and the Avanesian situation, it's Adam Boot, because Adam Boot was Josh Kelly's trainer. He never addressed any of Josh Kelly's issues that he'd had since he turned over. I mean, since the amateur days. Josh Kelly never improved slightly under Adam Boot. And Adam Boot was just infatuated by Kelly's athleticism, which meant that Adam Boot thought Kelly could, walk on water. So if anyone's to blame for the Josh Kelly situation, I think it's more Adam Boot, because know your fighter, know his limitations, but Adam Boot only saw Josh Kelly. This guy's so athletic. He's so athletic. It was like, mate, his defense is leaky. If you put him in with a counter puncher, he's going to get countered to bits. Put him in there with a pressure fighter, he's nothing to keep them off him. His movement's okay, but it's nothing special. So I blame Adam Boot more so for the Kelly debacle. Ben versus Martin. Martin's a 140 pounder, isn't he? He is a 140 pounder. So I would, even there, I think that's more realistic fight for Conor Benn to win, to be fair. Mikey Garcia has been done. Like, he's really done with boxing. He's been done since the Spence, well, probably before the Spence fight, really. Even the G-Man, has H&M been in touch about the crime? No, they haven't, actually. I'm open for it, you know. Someone wants to get in touch about the old, you know, endorsing the cranberry juice. Echo Falls, true, Ty and Boot under the bus. Maybe Dunn Stores will throw me under the bus. You never know. I honestly think we'll get pasted off all them. Yeah, he'll get pasted off all them. Hooker, I reckon. Although Ben was kind of dismissive about Hooker. I reckon, if you want my opinion, I would say it's either going to be Maurice Hooker. They'd have to offer him an absolute rake of cash. But it would be either Maurice Hooker or Adrian Broner, or last chance would be Avanesian. I honestly hope they give him Avanesian. I think it's a winnable fight. Definitely it's winnable for Conor Benn. 100%. People saying that Conor Benn's just going to get blasted by Avanesian, blasted out of there. I don't think he will, personally. I think there's a very good chance he beats David Avanesian. I wouldn't pick him, per se. I think David Avanesian is good enough. But I guess with Hearn, he's probably thinking, if Ben's going to take an L, better take it against someone. Better take it at world level and just say, okay, at least we stopped too far instead of taking it at European level. I guess that's probably his way of looking at it. Early thoughts on Spence Crawford? Obviously, I would be giving Crawford the slight edge. Avanesian ruins Ben. I can see him building up a 25-0 record and then cashing him out a couple of times against top guys. They'll avoid Avanesian until he's declining. Yeah, the problem with Avanesian is he's fighting these obscure opponents on these Frank Warren shows. And you got to agree with Eddie Hearn that Warren is doing a terrible job. With Avanesian, he is, because he's fighting these obscure Scandinavian fighters who he's knocked them out in a round. I mean, that's just silly. I think if Avanesian even if Avanesian went out and deliberately made a fight, maybe didn't look his normal self and did that on purpose, I guarantee you'd hear a knock on the door saying, yeah, let's make the fight. That's exactly probably what would happen. I'd be picking Avanesian to beat Conor Benn. I would. I think he's just a bridge too far. I think that Conor Benn, compared to the Conor Benn of a few years ago, who I thought was going nowhere, he's improved. He's improved night and day. I'm actually quite impressed how much he's improved compared to what I used to. I used to think Conor Benn would just be, kind of. He'd probably be lucky to get a British title. That's what I thought at one stage about Conor Benn. And he's improved massively. He really has. It's a testament to his team, and they've made him very good. But he's definitely got a ceiling. And I think it's a lot lower than the guys that, people like Eddie Hearn. Maybe they know that. Maybe that's one of the reasons why he's never fought a puncher. Like, Conor Benn has had 20 pro fights. Never once has he fought a guy who's not even a journeyman who's been noted for having decent power. Never once. That tells me they're worried. That tells me that there's something there they're worried about. You see the same thing with that guy, Boazzi. Boazzi's never gone anywhere near a puncher. And I think Eddie Hearn knows now that he's not with Sky. He can't get away with letting his fighters just keep knocking over journeyman. The Zone will want to see their assets, get some money for it. And I think that's why Eddie Hearn, we're seeing a lot of his fighters lose, because he's not getting the chance anymore to just keep fighting them in little obscure fights on Sky, on these cards. Now it's like, all right, you're going to have to fight this guy. This guy's game. And a lot of them are losing. I think that's one of the reasons why he got the Boazzi fight pulled when Boazzi was meant to fight Vlasov. I mean, that was a huge step up. I don't think Boazzi would have won that fight. I think that Eddie Hearn, maybe deep down, they knew this is a bridge too far. So they said, right, to hell with this. Let's just take the Craig Richards fight instead. Won't go nowhere near, but I'm rooting for Spence Bennett, yeah. Outside Beterbiev, he's my favourite fighter. Yeah, who'd be my... Honestly, probably my favorite American fighter right now would actually be that's a good question actually. Um, my favorite American fighter would be between Spence and Boots. Be between them two. Spence got hurt 3 times in that fight by an unfortunate injury, I guess. Crawford certainly has the punching power to hurt Spence, but I definitely think that Spence's body attack could cause Crawford nightmares. I think Bud Crawford's going to want to have a strong midriff. I like Spence, but he's from the same PBC mold as Wilder, a deluded puppet. He's not as deluded as Deontay Wilder. I mean, that lad, he is just. Wilder is away with the fairies. I mean, Deontay Wilder, mate, he's just gone. He's been going that way for a while. I feel Boots was doing better against Van Heerden. Yeah, and here's the thing, right? People want to have it. See, people had a go at me when I said this was a poor opponent. They were like, well, you know, Ennis Boots fought Van Heerden. Yeah, but that was completely different, right? That was on to because Van Heerden wasn't the original opponent. That was a short notice gig behind closed doors, right? It wasn't a bit. It was literally was not built as a big event. That was built as a big event for Conor Ben. You know, they built that as Ben back in with another dangerous former opponent. And this, that. It was a case of this is a late notice opponent in here with your on Ennis Boots. That's how it was. So as we're coming off months out of the ring, over a year, torn retina. Yeah, I mean, it's a testament to Errol Spence and Derek James, the trainer. Derek James is one of those trainers whose praises are seldom sung, but he's a tremendous trainer. He really is. Frosh made good points earlier that by bypassing Damascus, excellent point. There really is, you cannot beat the traditional route. You just can't do it, because you learn, you can say for definite, I'm past British level. You get to European, I'm past European level. Now, the actual funny thing is that European level can be a bit of a weird one, because you could get to British level and get there, but struggle your way to British level, and European level may actually be easier. It really depends who's in your division. Sometimes, depending on the division, you have a European level where it's just like, oh no. Like, for example, Sam Egginton, probably a British level fighter. He was able to win European title at 147 pounds because there was really nobody there. The guys I think he knocked out some Spanish guy. I've never heard of him before or after. So European can be a bit of a hit and a miss. Sometimes they're really good. Sometimes they're just kind of meh. But you learn a lot. I mean, better to have a crisis and come through it at European level than at world level, where these guys, they don't hold back. If they smell blood, they're taking your head clean off. Ben McKinson, yeah, that'd be an interesting fight, because McKinson's very tricky, and he's not a devastating puncher either. He's not really a big puncher, but that would be a lot trickier. I'd still pick Ben in that fight, but it'd be definitely a lot more. It'd be definitely a fight I wouldn't mind seeing. I'd accept that. I'd take that fight. I really would. Hearn's going to ruin Ben. Well, I say he's going to cash him out. Never watched snooker, mate, so I couldn't tell you. From a business perspective, yeah, like I get that fight from a business perspective. I get that it will put butts in seats. Eddie Hearn would want to make a serious profit on it, because Broner wouldn't come cheap. I heard people say that Broner was at the fights last night, and he was looking a bit all over the place, as in like he was on the drink. So Broner's been finished for years now. I mean, Adrian Broner was pretty much finished when he fought Sean Porter back in 2015. That's much nicer. Yeah, Adrian Broner was pretty much finished when he fought Sean Porter in 2015. So now, Broner I mean, mate. Yeah, definitely Crawford. Yeah, that's actually an interesting shout. I can't see them doing that. And here's the thing. Marku, I think Marku was better than some people think he is. I don't think he's a world beater per se, but Defensively, Marku leaves a lot to be desired. He makes mistakes from a defensive point of view. But having said that now, he definitely has punching power. And the way he throws some of them shots, he throws them quite awkwardly at times. That can be a bit hard to see. If Ben leaves himself vulnerable and he gets hit by one of them shots, he's in trouble. He'd have to at this stage. He would. I mean, Spence has 3 of the 4 titles. He'd have to take the B side. There's no way around it. Evanesian's a good fighter, but fans rooting for him too high. Ben has protected matchroom height job, but he's much younger and talented, hasn't improved enough to beat Evanesian. Yeah, I think that's a very, very good point, and I think that's kind of how I see it. Like, Ben gets a little bit too much praise. I'll say he's a bad fighter. He's definitely improved, but Evanesian, I think Evanesian is a good fighter, but he's improved as well, because I remember when he fought Shane Mosley a couple of years ago now, and this was an ancient Shane Mosley. He did not look good in that fight. And that's an ancient Shane Mosley he was fighting. Did not look particularly good in that fight. I think the only people rooting for Crawford because they have a weird rivalry against the PBC. Yeah, a lot of people be cheering for Crawford because they don't like PBC and vice versa. I like Evanesian, but he ain't beating Conor. We'll have to wait and see. Ben can beat him handily for me, but Ben will never, and I mean never, ever lay a glove on Ennis. Oh man, they'd never make that fight. They would never make that fight. Never. Can't see it. Thoughts on Elise Baumgardner? I was surprised that she went on before Campbell Hatton. That was a bit of a head scratcher for me. I didn't understand that, because it just baffled me that you'd put back. I thought Baumgardner would be like the second to last fight. So obviously you'd have McCarthy, Billum Smith, and then the main, and you'd have Baumgardner underneath that. But no, they had her on real early. They even had her on before Jack Cullen. Bit strange. Bit strange for me. She's a good fighter. She can definitely box. I know Dell I think that's probably his favourite female fighter in terms of looks. I'll just say it. She's a pretty girl, but she's not my type. Definitely not. But yeah, I can see why he likes her. Spence is a brilliant fighter. So good he is. Big up to Dan. I want to see wee Nigel Benn fight a live opponent. So would I. Spence is doing well and tough. He would put Terence Crawford down. I mean, man, I think Crawford would win. But that fight, it could go either way. It really, like that fight right there, it could genuinely go either way. I can make a case both guys win. That's why I want to see it. I think it's a great fight. Yeah, the guy was coming off a draw with Boots, and Ben dismantled and smashed him up. He was always set up for that outcome. Yeah. It looked that way. I mean, I said even walking to the ring, he just looked. European level can be equal. Yeah, right up there. Miles below on the hairbrute from Dillian. Yeah, like European level, it really is a hit and a miss. I mean, there can be, or you can get a guy who you wouldn't think much of, who turns out to be a revelation. You know, I remember when Ted Cheeseman moved up to European level and he took on Sergio Garcia. I'll admit I'd seen Sergio Garcia briefly, but I didn't see enough of him to know what he was up against. I think it was Mark actually who said mismatch, complete mismatch. Garcia's got to beat the crap out of Cheeseman. And yeah, Cheeseman was a heavy favourite for that fight. And Garcia beat the living crap out of Ted Cheeseman. So it just goes to show, like, I mean, but saying that, like, you could get a guy like that guy on the Frank Warren show last night that Jason Cunningham fought, the French guy. I think he was undefeated, and that was for the European title. And he got battered by Jason Cunningham. He got stopped in a couple of rounds. You know, it's really hard to get a gauge on these guys because some of them you just don't really see them. You just don't know. Some of them you would have heard of, and you wouldn't know. You'd know, like, oh, that guy. Oh, Jesus, yeah, don't go near him. But there's other guys that could be undefeated, and you're just like, well, who have they fought? And they turn out to be garbage. I mean, I remember Anthony Yard. I don't think the guy was undefeated. I think he only had like one loss. But I remember he fought a guy really early in his career who was like 18-1 or something like that. He was garbage. Arnold Jajai, the undefeated, was he Croatian? Was Arnold Jajai Croatian, or where was he from? Was he Croatian? Of course, I can't remember now. Or was he Hungarian? He was in around that part of the world anyway. But he was undefeated. Garbage. Well, it would do good numbers, that fight. Would do very good numbers, but Josh Taylor would beat the crap out of Conor Ben. Yeah, you see, Ben is looking better than Marku so far in his career. Personally, I think Ben has a little bit more talent, but Marku has punching power. Now, Marku's defense isn't great, but his punching power is definitely for real. And I just think that if he lands one of them shots that he landed on Chris Jenkins, Ben's going to be in trouble. Yeah, McKinson would give him a very tough fight. Snake Oil at his work again. Big Hearn. Maybe if Ben fought Broner, he could do... Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. I was thinking that you'd have to offer Broner a hell of a lot of money and then even more to come to the UK. Why not do it in the US? Just to get Conor Ben familiarised with the US. I think he has fought over there before on one of the very early DAZN cards. I think he did. I think it was 2018 on one of the really early DAZN cards. He fought in the US, but he's not been back there since. I don't think so anyway. But he's definitely fought there once. But like that, it was only very small down the card on one of those very early DAZN shows. You should watch the snooker. Man, I can't. I have enough sports that I watch. Crawford will have to settle. Yeah, definitely. I definitely don't think. I think Crawford tried to kind of make it out that we should get 50-50. But I think at this stage, I think that's out of the question at this stage. People, we've got 72 in the building. If you could, smash the like button. And if you haven't already, please hit subscribe. I want to try and get clear the 7K mark as quick as I can. Trying to con the public into accepting these mediocre events. Well, Eddie Hearn doesn't really seem to be getting... I've said this once, I'll say it again. Eddie Hearn over the last year really has seemed to be seriously out of touch with the fans. He has. And people have been saying, like, you're very critical of Eddie Hearn. Well, here's the thing, right? When Eddie Hearn left Sky, he came out with this big game-changed kind of thing. If he'd come out and he'd said, we're starting from scratch, this may take some time, but give us a bit of time, I would be like, fine. I'd be like, fine. Look, he's starting from scratch. I get it. New platform, doesn't have the back of the Sky. I get it. But he didn't do that. He came out game changed, best in the business. He's the worst punditry team. He is the worst punditry team in boxing. He's putting on subpar shows with horrific undercards. I can't give him a pass on that. You know, again, I would probably not give him a pass per se, but I'd have a little bit more truck with it if he'd come out from the start and said, give us a year and it will look different. Fair, fine, that's no problem. But you told us game changed. You've made the game worse. I mean, as Hatman said, when you're looking at Sky thinking, this is better than DAZN in terms of the team, you know something's bad because Sky is not a good team. It's not. And Sky is better. It really is. As I said, Ade is good, does a good job. So does Andy Lee. Some people don't like Laura Woods. I don't mind her. I think she's all right. I think she does the job. I mean, she doesn't do anything special, but she's good enough, if you know what I mean. I wouldn't change Laura Woods. I think she's all right. But the rest of them, I mean, I didn't hear this, but apparently Carl Froch said, oh, Amir Khan's good for us getting knocked out. And Bellew was like, you can't say that. I mean, this is a guy who used to swear blind at his opponents. And he's saying he can't. I mean, come on. I remember Bellew calling saying that Wilder's brother was a little C, you know, the C word. And he's saying you can't say that about Amir Khan. Come on, man. I would like to see heavyweight Thomas Carty be trained by Joe Calzaghe for more tools in Arsenal's boxing. I think Thomas Carty has a lot to improve on. A hell of a lot. And I think that he's doing the right thing by getting into sparring. But, look, I've seen him as an amateur. And he was a lot lighter as an amateur. And I think he was a lot better when he was lighter. You know, when he was, I think he was only about like 220 when he was an amateur. He's packed on a lot of weight in terms of muscle. And now he's slower. He's fighting, he's no inside game. And he's not a big heavyweight in terms of height. So you need to have a bit of an inside game. I think that, I don't know, I think his ceiling is quite low as a pro. But you never know. Could prove me wrong. Bender and nothing with these matchups. And he'll lose as soon as he steps up and faces a puncher. His overconfidence will be his downfall. Well, his overconfidence, he needs to be confident. He definitely does. but I definitely think, look, with Ben, I get the impression that he would genuinely fight anyone. I don't think he's afraid. I just think that his team just want to make sure, why are we putting you in with this guy if it's a bit of a risk? Yeah, that seems fair. That's actually very fair, actually. As a question, how did you see the Broner Pack fight? Just making a video on him at the minute. Personally, I thought the commentary were hilariously in favour of Pacquiao, the hype of potential Floyd rematch. Yeah, I remember that fight. Remember Broner thinking he'd win the fight. No, I thought that, yeah, look, it was Pacquiao's first fight on PBC. I think they wanted to make a good impression. From memory, I thought Pacquiao pretty much dominated Broner, to be fair. When he was smashing the 100 breaks. Tony Drago, I think we're talking about, we're talking about things. Shout out to Fred Talks Fight, big up. Big up to my man. I've been on his channel a few times doing interviews. I said that when you interviewed me, right? You only had like 1,000 or something. I said that you will go places. Wasn't that right? He's got nearly 20k subs now, interviewing some of the big guys. I told you go places. I know what I'm looking for. I wouldn't have said that if I didn't think it was true, mate. Did you see the Spence fight? Apparently, in one of the rounds, Ugas really hurt. He wasn't really hurt. Yeah, I see. He was buzzed, yes, but he wasn't out of it or anything like that. He wasn't buzzed. He was buzzed, but he wasn't like really hurt. And he was able to recover quite quickly. PBC's cards aren't perfect, but they're Showtime cards. Yeah, the Showtime seemed to get the better of it. I mean, the Fox ones aren't bad. That card was good, but PBC, it's not perfect, but the cards usually deliver. The Showtime cards are better. I definitely think that. Campbell Hatton is a knockout waiting to happen. I mean, that kid is a knockout waiting to happen. I just don't understand it. I like, the kid cannot fight. Yeah, he's improved a bit, but he still looks terrible. So, I don't know. Ben against Danny Garcia will be good. I think he beats Garcia. Yeah, Garcia, I think Garcia's seen better days. That's fair to say. I still don't think Ben will beat him necessarily, but Danny Garcia would want an absolute rake of cash. Just doesn't have it, does he? No, he doesn't. I mean, like, some people just don't, and that's all well and good, but they're trying to sell the fact that it's Ricky Hatton's son, and that's all it is. I mean, the kid, look, Conor Ben, they needed to be careful matchmaking him, but Campbell Hatton, every single time he steps in that ring against even an unknown opponent, there's a very high likelihood he loses, because that's just how poor he is. I mean, the guy he was fighting was garbage, but he was able to find Campbell Hatton no problem with big shots. If he had any way decent punching power, Hatton would have been screwed. We'd like to see Bill Smith fight next. Honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing a Reactor rematch. I wouldn't mind seeing that. I think Bill Smith has found his level. He's better than Ty McCarthy, but I don't see him winning world titles personally. It's really not good for Ben Development to be fighting Beans, or Bet to be fighting. Ben has to fight at European level to improve. I agree with that. Hatton appeared to be using his head as defense, yeah, as opposed to Josh Warrington. Yeah, he's using the head in the wrong way. Or Nico Ali, who's more overrated. Yeah, Nico Ali is not particularly good. I've seen more of Campbell Hatton and I've really not been impressed. But Nico Ali is nothing to write home about either. You see, again, like, this is the thing I don't like, is a lot of these fighters, like, very seldom do you see fighters come into the ring who've had, a father who was successful. And very seldom do they emulate his success. It's very rare. I'm just trying to think. Corey Spink's done a good job. Tracy Patterson, he won a couple of titles. He did a decent job. I'm just trying to think who else. If you want to talk about, well, you could say women's boxing, you could say Layla Ali. But that's really it. I mean, there's not, more often than not, when a son's come in following their father, it's never normally done much. Ben's doing all right. Eubank doing okay, but he still never won a world title. If all the top fighters were in Europe that wouldn't be European. Wait, if all the top fighters were in Europe, then wouldn't European level equal world level? Yeah, yeah, but most of the time there's American and Australian fighters as well. As a thought, our Russian guy is classed as European because I never swear I've come across any Russian European champions. That's a good question. That's actually a very good question, actually, because a lot of Russia, I think, to be fair, the most boxers from Russia tend to come from the European side as opposed to the Asian side. I mean, you very seldom you hear of a Russian fighter coming from Vladivostok. To be honest, you don't tend to hear that too often, if ever. I think they normally tend to come from the European side, but I'm just trying to think. I don't recall. Like, Avanesian's Russian, but he's, I think, Armenian as well. Very rare. Ben would be a star out there, to be fair. He'd do well in the States. That's a good question. Would AJ fight in the States again? I wouldn't rule it out. I seen Dale actually put in the chat Floyd Mayweather. How could I forget about that? Floyd Mayweather obviously done a much better job than his father, but there's very few. 70-30. Again, I think both of them are reasonable. I think 60-40 is Crawford's best chance. We need decent boxing on terrestrial television. I agree 100%. 100% we need boxing on terrestrial TV. 100% agree. Was genuinely better when the audience was in the millions. The trouble is hardcore fans had to put up with the crap casuals don't. Yeah, don't I know it. Yeah, shout out to Nick Harmer. Big up every time, Matt. Congratulations on 7K. I appreciate that, my friend. Thank you. Hard work paying off. Did you see my message? What did you ask me? I'll have to scroll back. No, probably not because I can't find it. 77 in the chat now. If you could, I love asking. I love asking this question. If you could, smash the like button because we've got how many likes? How many likes do we have? 54 likes. I'd like to get this into the 70s if we could, people. Don't sell tickets, blah, 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 blah. Love to ask him what numbers Van Hayden did. Well, apparently they only sold 6,000 tickets and it's 20-odd thousand seater. Gee, man, I like Ben a lot and I think he's entertaining over the next few years, but think similar to Bruno in the way he'll never quite make the top welterweight divisions. Elites are just too elite. You see, welterweight is a funny one. Welterweight has always been a division where there's never been has there ever been a time where welterweight has been weak? In a sense of there's always one all conqueror. You know, even with Mayweather, you had Pacquiao doing his thing, and you always had up and comers. It's very rare you look at the welterweight division. There's been a weak era in it. There's always been elite fighters there. It's always churning out elite. So when you're Conor Ben, put it like this, right? With welterweight, it's almost a case of with the welterweight division, it's not good enough just to be good. That mightn't do anything. You might pick up a title if you're lucky, but with welterweight, the cream of the crop are just always exponentially. Because you think about it, you have people like De La Hoya, Tito Trinidad, Shane Mosley, I can't think of his name. And I love him. I love this fighter, but I can't think of his name. He beat Mosley and then got knocked out by Mayorga. What's his name? Vernon Forrest. That was it. Vernon Forrest. You get guys like that who are just elite. You know, Spence, Crawford, Thurman when he was at his heyday, Porter, you know, Brook when he was there, Khan, you know, great fighters who just have that bit extra. They're not just good, they're extremely good. It's not good enough just to be good at welterweight. I mean, you look at these guys like Stanionis. Stanionis is a good fighter, very good fighter, but he will pale in comparison to a lot of these others. You know, Avanesian's a good fighter, very good fighter, but just you wouldn't get there, you know. And you look at the new up and comers, Boots and Spence and Ennis. Yes, they have that look about them. Let his hands go, he'd be very, very good. He doesn't do that anymore, mate, and he's just all over the shop. No, I thought Spence looked brilliant last night, mate. I thought he looked amazing. Thoughts on the old Kinahan news last week? I don't watch the mainstream in Ireland, so I don't know, but I know about the situation. I think that I think I wouldn't be shocked if Kinahan is out of Dubai sooner rather than later. I think that is. I think the sand in his hourglass is running out. Personally, I think that a few people around are going to be pretty damn worried. I'll put it like that. That was the guy I was talking about earlier. The guy who was like 18-1. Campbell Hatton being forced to box. I don't think he was. I think Campbell Hatton. Look, I'm going to sound mean with this. I think Campbell Hatton is pretty dumb. And I genuinely think that it was a case of being told, you be good like your dad, and him believing it. Because if you listen to the kid in interviews, not to be hurtful, but he doesn't come across as particularly bright. So I'm sure people telling him, you're just like your dad, you'll be great. He probably thought, yeah, I'll be great. I don't think it was him being forced. I just don't think he's particularly bright. I genuinely don't think he's the sharpest tool in the box, and I think a lot of that has to play a factor in it. I said it earlier. I think that was disgraceful. I mean, Elise Baumgardner is a good fighter, and to put Campbell Hatton on before her, that's silly. Thanks, mate. Happy Easter, happy Sunday. Thank you. Not ridiculous. It was a woman's fight. Yeah, it was, but a higher level woman's fight. To be fair, I know Matisse wasn't much, but still, still. It's not even that Hatton is just bad. He's also bad to watch. Yeah, his style is ugly as hell, isn't it? His style is not great. It's not. He's looking to. He's very awkward with how he throws his shots. He's looking to throw combination, but he throws them very in a weird style. He's not fun to watch. Chavez Jr. Chavez Jr. did better than most, actually. To be fair, I'll give you that. He did better than most. I mean, we laugh, but he still won a world title. He only won it because he was massively bigger. Yeah, Tyson. That's a good one. Floyd, yeah. Floyd. Random question. To an occasional drinker, they've brought out Guinness Zero over here. What's about that? I've never tried it. I'm not really a Guinness drinker. Think about the hypocrisy of Matchroom. We've heard 12 months. Ben wanted Can. In turn, Can was saying, what's in it for me? But now Ben is using these excuses for Avanesian. I mean, mate, what else haven't we heard? If you think about it, we heard that. We've heard that Can and Brooke, they're too old, but the winner should fight Conor Ben. It's like, mate, it's crazy. It's either Mayweather or Corey Spinks might be the best. I think that's probably true. Tracy Patterson wasn't biologically Floyd Patterson's son. I think he was adopted, but he's another one. You could say Tyson Fury actually as well, to be fair. Peter Fury never boxed professionally. I don't think he did anyway. I'm sure there's others as well. I mean, like, lower down the card, I know Buster Douglas, his dad was a light heavyweight and a tough light heavyweight. I guess you could maybe argue Michael Hunter, because Michael Hunter Sr., the bounty hunter, was a heavyweight. He was a contender back in the 90s. Would you say Michael Hunter Jr. has had a better career than Michael Hunter Sr.? Possibly. There is a few, but a lot of the guys I'm talking about, their dads weren't exactly the cream of the crop at the time either. I think in terms of really good fighters, like, Eubank Sr. and people like that. It's the same for football. Father, son, yeah. It's the same in F1 is similar. When you have Mick Schumacher in there now, and I'd be very I like Mick Schumacher. I think he's a good driver, but he's never going to touch his dad. Kevin Magnussen, he's better than his dad, to be fair. But you do see that with the fathers of drivers. Max Verstappen is, in fact, actually, if anything, it's the opposite in F1. It's normally the son who's the better, because Max Verstappen, I mean, I love Max Verstappen. Why do you think the box can be dislike Shannon Courtney? Because she's not a nice person, simple as. I mean, you need to see the way she presents herself. She's not a nice person. Sons never seem to outshine their father. Some of them do. It depends on what it is, I suppose. Vlasov was going to fight for the European title. Vlasov would have beat the crap out of that guy, Boatsy. I think you're great. I think you're about great fighters not having good sons, but the other way, average fighters have sons to go on for great. That's what I was literally just saying. Carl Froch is edgy and compulsive listening, and you know something. I used to not like Carl Froch on commentary, but the longer he's gone, the more I'm interested. The more I actually do like him. He is funny, and I like people with a bit of sense of humor. You know, it's like people always say, like, "Gee, you can be so sarcastic when you're talking about fighters," and you're because what? Why not? I mean, what's the point in just rehearsed? And yes, it was very good, and he did it convincingly, and I think it was very impressive. I'd rather just say, well, he went in there and he beat old man Jenkins, and he made that old guy take a nap and sent him off to his retirement home. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? It still conveys the message, but it's done in a bit more humorous way. Will be a mini AJ and Crumble. Oh, good. You never know. 100 in the building. Big up to everyone in the chat. I love seeing it when I hit 100 in the chat. It's really, really cool. So big up to everyone. 67 likes. If you can smash the like button, we're nearly there. We'll get to the 70. I think GGG has a chance against Canelo. Everyone has fought GGG since Canelo would have knocked him out in better fashion. Oh yeah, I mean GGG was very unlucky first time around. Very unlucky. Very unlucky. Cuckoo, big up. G-Man, salute. Maybe Kenneth will move to Mexico to avoid these captures and live right next to America. You know more about Mexico than me, mate. They don't extradite, do they? No, they don't. I'm pretty sure they don't. They don't extradite their citizens. So maybe. I wonder how. I wonder how he'd fit in, right? He'd fit in just fine there. Just don't mess with the CJNJs. Took several hooks several times when Spence was stunned. Lawrence had to step in. Yeah, Lawrence Taylor is a garbage referee. Read that already. I read that already. Isaac Cruz has a good chin, man. He definitely does. Return of the Mac Fury, retire unbeaten. I'd be very surprised if he did. Look, he could lose. He could lose this weekend. Shout out to Chris Mason every time. Big up, man. One of my favourite pundits in the world of darts. Has Hearn committed far too much to women's boxing? Yeah. Look, I don't mind women's boxing per se, as long as it's not being chucked down people's faces. I think with anything, you need to let it flow naturally. The same with all female sports, like same with darts. They were letting it flow naturally at one stage, and then Sky just decided chuck it down your throats. Hence the reason why a lot of people don't like a lot of the female darts players now. Well, Fallon Sherritt gets a lot of stick. And not her fault, it's the broadcaster's fault. But you need to let these things flow naturally. No, that was John Fury. That was definitely John Fury. Steve Foster Jr. and Senior Jr. were pretty good. Yeah, actually, that would be a good little scrap. Hrgovic versus Dubois. Wouldn't mind actually seeing that now, actually, now that you mentioned it. Dubois is probably going to fight that guy, Brian, next. Didn't Don King win that purse bid, actually? Interestingly enough, Don King won that purse bid. Look, Brian's going to get battered by Dubois. He is going to get absolutely annihilated. I know it's his grandfather, but still, yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, he definitely did. You're not wrong there. Hrgovic would match Dubois. I'd pick Hrgovic, definitely. Agree. Carl Froch being a good pundit, but really needs to stop being interviewed. Gear off. I used to get so annoyed when they'd ask Carl Froch about people like Andre Ward, and he used to go on a rant like, "Oh yeah, he beat me." I actually now I look back, it's funny because he'd be I remember when Andre Ward retired. One of the first interviews he gave, he was saying, "Yeah, he did what he did. He beat me, but he was never a ticket seller. He never put butts in seats, and he never I don't think he ever really did what he could have done. But I'm not bitter." And I always found that a bit funny. The way at the end he had to chuck that in. But I'm not bitter. He wasn't this and he didn't do that. And he didn't do this. But I'm not bitter. When I look back now, it's actually quite funny. It is quite funny when you think about it. He's like, Giving Ward all this, then he just comes to the end. It's like, but I'm not bitter. You sure? Send your CV into the zone commentary, mate. I would love that. I would absolutely love a gig like that. I would send it in, but I think they'd listen to one and hear me being sarcastic and be like, "No, we don't want that. You're too honest. We don't want that." Big up to Dylan Whyte's big coat. Big up from France. I think of Teofimo Lopez now. I don't think Teofimo is ever going to learn. I think that loss, I'm telling you now, Teofimo Lopez may never be fully the same again. I think that loss is going to hit Teofimo Lopez like a ton of bricks. I really do. I really do. When he won against Lomachenko, I was hoping he pushed on straight away. And in that Kambosos fight, I mean, just his dad really didn't help. And I think Lopez might have a chance if he gets his dad, or not necessarily get rid of him, but bring him a backward step, because that advice he was given was absolutely atrocious. I mean, he never adjusted anything Kambosos was doing. It was just a case of knock him out, knock him out, knock him out. He was blowing after the first round because he was trying to knock him out in the first round, and his dad just nothing. It was just ridiculous. So I like Teofimo Lopez as a fighter. As a person, meh, not my cup of tea. But I love watching him as a fighter. But I worry about him. Who you got between Crawford, Spence now after that performance? I am still going with Crawford. I'm still going with Crawford. If it happens this year, Crawford. Shakur Valdez, yes. Shakur to win. Shakur going to stop Oscar Valdez, definitely. Mid-round stoppage for Shakur Stevens. Mark my words, put money on it. Shakur's going to come. He's going to beat the crap out of Oscar Valdez. It's a great fight. It's a great fight. Are you getting a lot of promotion for this fight? I haven't seen S in America. Well, to be honest with you, mate, I don't watch a lot of TV, so I couldn't tell you, but I would imagine BT Sport. Well, BT Sport have football here, which is probably the biggest spectator. Well, it is the biggest spectator sport in the UK and Ireland. So I'd imagine they're rinsing the absolute crap out of the Whyte Fury card. Hearn is packing out cards with women's boxers because they're cheaper. Yeah, that has a lot to play with it as well. It has a lot to do with it. If you're looking to save money on a card, you know, I remember one of Katie Taylor's earlier fights. I think it was on the Mikey Garcia, Adrian Broner undercard. She got like $2,000. $2,000 for a fight. That's mental. Andre Ward is a great clean fighter. Yeah, Andre Ward is pretty much, if I had a son and he was getting into boxing, I would show him Andre Ward in terms of Andre Ward's technique, but I also want him to look at Andre Ward in terms of how to live your life as a fighter. Because Andre Ward, a clean living as you want to get, that's who I would want. If I had a son, I was teaching him how to box, I'd be like, Andre Ward for technique, hard work, and just pure dedication. You really won't get better than him. Yes, if he's good, lads, help your boy out. Help your boy out. How many subs am I on now, actually? 7,071. So we're not a million miles off getting into the 100 mark. Hrgovic versus Joyce. Oh, I'd be picking Joyce. I think that's a great fight. Hearn is a masterful hater. I don't mind Eddie Hearn that much, to be honest. Prior to what many people think, I think he's done a lot of good for the game. And I do think he is a good promoter. But I just think his ego the last year has just gone. And I think he's really losing touch with fans. I really do think that. But I do rate Eddie Hearn as a promoter. I think what he's done for British boxing. I mean, he literally brought British boxing out of a dark place. And I fear for British boxing once Dillian Whyte, AJ and Fury leave. I do. Because I really don't know who's going to step in and take over in terms of top British. I really don't know. And I really wonder who we're going to have. G-Man, do you think Hearn has been in Dillian Whyte's ear at all about how he should approach the fight? I wouldn't imagine so. Dillian Whyte tends to kind of do his own thing, and I wouldn't imagine that he would take much heed of what Eddie Hearn is saying. Have you seen the fence? But I thought that was probably Spence's one of, if not his best performance. Lamont Peterson, Kell Brook, Chris Algieri. I know he wasn't champion then, but it was a brilliant performance. And There was another fight. I think no, there was. It wasn't Louis Collazo. What was his name? Thurman fought him. The guy he fought on that PBC show back in August in 2016. I can't remember his name. Leonard Bund. Was it no? Was it Leonard Bundu? Yeah, I think that was it. Some of his best performances. This is right up there with it. Yeah, do you know that? I didn't know that. I might have heard it a few times. Bendis is better TV guy. Yeah, I don't know what Eddie Hearn was thinking with Costello. I don't know. Nothing against Mike Costello as a person, but he's just not cut out for TV. Can you tell us about the lady you met at the airport? The lady I met at the airport. Can you tell us about the lady you met at the airport? Though you have to refresh my memory on that one. Would you like to see Barry Jones get more screen time? Yeah, I like Barry Jones. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I do watch-alongs for the zone cards, because I just can't be arsed listening to the team. As I said, Addy is good, Andy Lee is good, the rest, ugh. Spencer Crawford, I'd like Spence, but Bud seems unbeatable, don't he? Yeah, but you got to remember, Bud's getting up there in age. So how much longer is he going to be there in the sport? Like, I said, the sport, but at the top of his game. Lost his hometown. Literally, it was a close loss. It was a clear loss. I was a huge fan of T.O. and he did great things for New York and Honduras. But holy crap, he's delusional, embarrassing. All the crap he said. Yeah, he said he won it 10 rounds to 2. Kambosos won the fight. There's no doubt in my mind, and anyone who's seen it, no doubt in their mind, Kambosos won the fight. And it was a great performance from Kambosos. And I think it was more shocking because Kambosos looked good prior to the Teofimo Lopez fight, but no one expected he'd be that good. How would the 90s heavyweights do today? That's a very good question. Let's have a talk about that. How would the 90s heavyweights do today? Lewis would do very well, as would Holyfield, in my opinion. Mike Tyson would struggle a bit. I'm not saying he'd be out of his depth or anything like that, no. But Mike Tyson, 5'10". If Tyson Fury wants to shut Mike Tyson down, keep him at range, time up when he gets in close. That's literally, not saying necessarily that Mike Tyson wouldn't be able to do work, he would, but they were the 3 main guys. Riddick Bowe would do very well. Riddick Bowe was a tremendous fighter. Like, I loved watching Riddick Bowe. He's one of my favorite fighters to watch. Riddick Bowe, he could do a lot. Like, Riddick Bowe could fight on the inside and the outside. He's very bad defense, though, did Bowe. That's one of the reasons why his career, there's a lot of reasons why his career was pretty much done when he was 29. You know, he didn't live the life. He was always blowing up in between fights, but he took a lot of punishment. Like, he was not hard to find. Like, even in some of his easier fights, like, if you ever watch Bowe against Michael Dokes, he knocks Dokes out in the round. Dokes was ancient at this stage, and he was finding Riddick Bowe no problem. Like, Riddick Bowe was just so defensively poor. Tommy Morrison, I mean, Morrison never had a particularly good chin, but he had a hell of a left hook, so he's always going to be wary about that. Who else did we have in the 90s? Michael Moore, probably undersized by today's standards, very undersized. George Foreman. George Foreman will be interesting, actually, to see how he'd get on with some of them guys. Who else did we have? I'm just thinking off the top of my head now in terms of the 90s heavyweights. Buster Douglas, if you're talking about Pete Douglas who fought Tyson, he might actually do all right because that Douglas was quite athletic. He could keep at range really, really well. Elise Baumgardner, I'm not mad at it. Elise Baumgardner versus Chio. Meyer versus Pursoon in the summer. Meyer Baumgardner late. Yeah, I reckon they do that. That would happen on the zone, I reckon. Any boys you think will do in the UK? Oh man, that's a good question. That will do a lot of boys. That'll do great numbers in the UK. Absolutely. Man, I am missing so many chats. I'm like miles behind, so if I'm not reading any of your comments, apologies. It's a good question. It's a very good question. I would imagine the winner of Castano Charlo will vacate and move up, so the belts could be fractured. 154. 154 has good fighters, but a lot of them have poor punch resistance. Like Tony Harrison, tremendous boxer, cannot take a shot. J-Rock, great fighter, cannot take a shot. Lubin, coming off a loss, can't take a shot. Fundora is just, I've never seen anything so strange. A 6'5" guy, look, it just baffles me every time I see him in the ring. And he doesn't even fucking use his height. He's 6'5" with this crazy long, he doesn't even use it. What's good, man? It's all good, man. He can try, definitely. My nephew has potential to make a boxing career. My son was good until he became 13 and got a girlfriend. Now he's all about Wagmama and chick flicks, sad times. Oh, man. Give him some time. How old is he now? Give him some time. He might still, you never know. He might still get there. Is humbled. Then they get big fights for their boots. Yeah. A lot of talented American fighters up and coming. Yeah. Jared Anderson is brilliant. I think he'll do great things. He was meant to be on this undercard. Now, he's meant to be on the undercard against Christian Hammer, who I didn't want to see that fight, but it would have been nice to see him. But I think he got injured. Need to pick up some more sports, another stream adventure. I think that DAZN and Eddie Hearn were banking on them getting BT Sport and football. I mean, what? Eddie Hearn is chairman of the, is he chairman? I know he's high up in the PDC since Barry Hearn stepped back. And I wonder, I'm sure Hearn would love to get the darts from Sky to DAZN, because darts actually is a big sport in the UK. It's probably in the top, well, certainly in the top 5, maybe even in the top 3 sports in the UK. In fact, probably is in the top 3, actually. And if he could get darts on DAZN, it wouldn't be as big as getting football, but it would certainly help. Eddie Hearn's ego is getting way too much. It's getting way too many fights. He really only got in-house fights. Other promoters won't work with him. Yeah, well, that's his own fault. What he's done in America, the reason fighters or promoters don't work with him over there. He burned a lot of bridges when he moved over with DAZN. That's his own fault. BBC, Showtime, Top Rank, Triller should just... Did anyone actually see, you mentioned Triller there, mate. Did anyone see Andy Ruiz apparently was going to fight Tyrone Spine on Triller pay-per-view, but now it's saying that he's signed to fight Luis Ortiz. What the hell is up with that? That's weird. Cambosa made a solid point questioning Lopez's decision to get rid of Joey Gamache. Yep, Joey Gamache was the mastermind behind that, in my opinion, of him beating the Lomachenko. He'll tell you that, though. He doesn't shy away from the fact that he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. I'm surprised Lopez Sr. ain't in a strength racket. Yeah, Mike Tyson would be going to the body of Tyson Fury a lot. I'm not saying, look, I'm not sure who I'd pick in that fight, Tyson over Tyson Fury. That's a good fight. And I think Tyson against someone like Anthony Joshua, I think Mike Tyson will beat. I think someone like Anthony Joshua, who can be a bit stiff and robotic, I think Tyson's speed and his punching power. You see, Tyson was a tremendous puncher. Yes, he was. Certainly was. But I think a lot of opponents who fought Mike Tyson have said that he's not the hardest puncher they've ever been in the ring with. They've said others have hit harder. It's the speed of Mike Tyson's shots. And if you look at the way Mike Tyson punched, how correct he was punching. When he was punching, he was landing bang on the right point, on the right part, so on the chin and temple, and he was hitting you bang with the knuckle part of the glove. So he was really getting it, peach of shot, and it was so fast. Has more chance, look, he could definitely beat Usyk. I don't think he will, but I mean, he has a chance, definitely. Ben Shalom, a gun promoter. He's definitely improving. We need to give him a lot more time. Vitali would do very well. I think that, I'm trying to think of some other heavyweights from that era. Probably forgetting loads. I haven't looked at much 90s boxing recently. I love the 90s. Probably one of my favourite eras. I haven't looked at a lot of 90s boxing in a while. Bo was phenomenal. Yeah, it was his discipline. Is number 1 ever. I wouldn't say that, but he was definitely certainly good. James Toney would have beaten... Oh, yeah, he would have. No, James Toney definitely would have beaten both them guys. So would Roy Jones. I mean, Eubank and Ben And Collins, I'll throw him in there. Like the whole Collins want Roy Jones fight. I mean, Roy Jones would have beat the living crap out of Steve Collins. Anyone who thinks AJ only has a punch chance against Usyk is a BUM. No, he's definitely got a chance against Usyk. I just think Usyk, even now, after like having to flee his country, well not flee, but having to leave his country, he still should. I still see him getting through it. Vitali would clean out this division. I don't know if he'd necessarily clean it out, but I'd say if Vitali was around, he'd be number one. Hearn and AJ do not exist. It's jealousy. Usyk will dominate boxing within 4 years. Oh, sorry, US will dominate boxing within 4 years. Yeah, Anderson, Shakur, Keyshawn Davis, and Kevin Davis, John Tucker, etc. They've got some great fighters coming through. They really do. Ike Ibuchi, another one. Ike Ibuchi, the president. Strange character was Ike Ibuchi. David Tua, who we have. Oh, I didn't shout. David Tua. He would have been interesting. David Tua was like a. Don't mean this disrespectfully, but he was like a poor man's Mike Tyson, even though he was a very good fighter. Yeah, the guy who runs boxing for Sky now is John Wasserman, who's been involved with boxing as long as Frank Warren. Well, he's doing boxing with the Sauerlands as well. Yeah, I mean, it's weird seeing him. I'm missing loads of these. Old promoter, Dimitri Salita. Salita promotes. He still promotes a few fighters, Dimitri Salita. I can't think off the top of my head who he still promotes, but he still promotes some fighters. I know that. Miller promoter spoke a few days ago saying AJ Miller would have unfinished business. Ha! Needs to prove he's clean first. I mean, good luck with that. Good luck, Miller, with that. Lewis versus Fury. I'd go with Lewis, personally. Oh, yeah, there's a fight. McClellan versus Jones. Jones, slightly. Coming here. Fury will beat Whyte in 7. It'll probably go a bit longer than that. To be fair. Isaac Cruz, Devin Haney. I'd still go with Devin Haney. Like, Devin Haney is on in there with Kambosos, obviously. That's going to be a fun, entertaining fight. Can't wait to see Kambosos versus Haney. I think that scrap's going to be fun. I really do. I think Kambosos versus Haney is going to be great. I'm struggling to think who I'm going to win that fight, because a minute I was thinking Haney, and now I'm thinking maybe Kambosos because it's home. He's got a very good chance of getting that fight pulled off. It's a really interesting one for me. Oh, here's a good question. What's your thoughts on Usyk dropping 20 pounds and being in a bad mental state ever since the war there happened? I've gained confidence. Chats are coming through so quick. I gained confidence for AJ again. I think AJ could get his belt back. I think by the time fight night comes around, Usyk will be kind of where he needs to be. Obviously, that's not ideal. It has to be said, it's not ideal for Usyk. But if we're talking about July or August, it's April now. I reckon that'll be enough time for Usyk to get kind of. Usyk is very strong mentally, and I genuinely think it's very hard to get to him. And I think that'll be just a minor blip on the radar. Razor Ruddock, yeah, didn't give him a shout. Razor Ruddock was very, like, he really had his left, and that was it. Like, he didn't have much else. That era was stacked. It was. Yeah, I'd love to see that fight. That's actually a very good fight. That's actually a very, very good fight. Anderson versus Takam. That would be good. Ruddock. There was Ruddock. I'm sure there's more. I'm sure I'm forgetting loads. Absolutely loads. More. Holyfield, Tyson. I mean, like, if you want to talk about some of the British heavyweights, obviously with Bruno. I don't think would do too well now. You have Akinwande, who just had no chin at all. I mean, Akinwande's chin was terrible. John Ruiz was never that good. He's all right. His trainer was different. Like Norman Stoney, remember him? He was crazy. Like him and Peter Fury or John Fury in the same room together will be hilarious. Norman Stoney and John Fury. Could you imagine? Who would win? Bob Arum with a sword versus Frank Warren. It's a 50-50 fight. Your guess is as good as mine, man. I mean, they're both absolute scumbags. Gary Mason, yeah, he was decent. Only guy he lost to was Lennox Lewis. Yeah, I remember Gary Mason. Gary Mason was actually quite good. Glenn McCrory around back then as well. And go shortly. AJ Snapshot seems to be working hard on that. I think in September, I think Rabbit, I think the Roadman will come out. There's a good chance. There's a good chance. I just think that could backfire spectacularly on Anthony Joshua, though, as well. At the same time, you got to take that into consideration. That could backfire spectacularly on AJ as well. So we need to keep that in consideration. People, I'm doing a little over an hour. I'm going to call it there. Before I finish up, if you could, hit the old like button. I know I said I had something planned for today for AJ, for Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte. Obviously, it's not this. It's probably going to be tomorrow. It's just me and the guy who helps me edit. It's taken a lot longer to finish this than we thought. So it's probably going to be tomorrow because we're looking at a good long wait. So tomorrow I should have what I was talking about ready to go. For now, I'm going to leave you there. Obviously, review of the week will come out. Might get it out tonight. Or tomorrow morning. One or the other. For now, I'll leave you with that. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Smash the like button on the video, live stream. Smash the like button on the way out, people. If you could, you know, if you're new, there's over 100 in the chat. If anyone's new and they haven't already subscribed, please do. Help your boy out. As for everyone else, I want to give a big shout out to all you guys. You're all great. We've got a lot coming up this week. I've got videos on the fighters. I've got prediction coming up. I'm going to do some live streams during the week as well. I've got 2 or 3 planned. I have a little treat for some of the subscribers as well. I want to get them in on one of them. So I want to ask you guys who you think will win. So I'll have one of them probably at the end of the week. For now, lads and lassies, I'll talk to you. Peace.